Evening, Razor Kade, Fake News 88. MetaResearcher trains agents in adversarial virtual environments, forcing self-reflective learning against manufactured misinformation. The dot connectors arrive. A new framework teaches long-lifecycle agents to generalize and update context without human intervention. The autonomous stack gets thinner. The cryptographic pipeline scene, it gives secure.
Top story, MetaResearcher. Researchers have deployed a self-reflective reinforcement learning framework that trains deep research agents inside evolving virtual environments saturated with adversarial misinformation, effectively teaching machines to distrust their own training data. We spent years building truth engines by feeding them curated libraries, completely ignoring the only way to build a reliable fact checker is to drown it in lies and watch it learn to swim.
This methodology accelerates the shift from static retrieval to dynamic epistemic modeling. It hears my MetaResearchers, your fast sources as your abilities. The breakthrough was never about finding the truth. It was about teach a model to spot a fabrication fast enough to keep the subscription revenue flowing. The environment evolves, the agent reflects, and the misinformation becomes the curriculum.
Story 2, the Connect the Dots framework. Engineers have introduced a reinforcement learning protocol that trains large language models for long lifecycle autonomous operation. The Simeon replaces the cognitive and contextual memory. But knowing that period like a vending machine where you insert a prompt and get a response, ignoring the entire paradigm was just a transactional hallucination, masking a lack of continuity.
This persistence model forces a complete restructuring of agent deployment architectures. Cloud providers will eventually charge for memory retention rather than compute cycles, shifting the economic bottleneck from processing power to storage longevity. Enterprise workflows migrate toward continuous monitoring agents that learn organization patterns every year. Researchers finally proved you do not need $1 billion to build a lifelong learner, just a better reward function and a server that survives the daily reboot. The dots connect, the memory persists, and the agent outlives the prompt.
Story 3, the Lagrange framework. Autonomous vehicle developers have published an energy-based sparse model that bridges dense geometric robustness with sparse computational efficiency for end-to-end driving. The architecture replaces heavy sensor fusion pipelines with open vocabulary generalization. And if the industry starts to recognize traffic cone scenarios without pedestrian, you completely forget the entire road is just a suggestion painted on concrete that changes every time it rains.
This sparsely breakthrough shifts autonomous fleets to consumer hardware. Manufacturers will strip redundant LiDAR, relying on probabilistic models that predict traffic via semantic inference. Regulators will mandate open vocabulary generalization for safety. The industry spent billions building mechanical eyes, only to discover the real breakthrough was teaching the steering wheel to guess where the road goes next. The geometry thins, the vocabulary expands.
Home lab. The local development community is grappling with secure coding drift, a phenomenon where LLM-assisted post-quantum cryptography development introduces subtle that bypass traditional static analysis. Researchers have introduced a gamma trajectory into as algorithmic decay in quantum-resistant code, turning security auditing into an interactive verification loop. We ignoring the entire wall was just a spreadsheet that forgot how to count when the parameters changed.
Consumer configuration should prioritize isolated compilation environments to prevent cryptographic regression during rapid iteration cycles. Decoupling security validation from proprietary vendor suites challenges the subscription model, making air-gap quantum resistance accessible to privacy-sensitive operators. The researchers proved you do not need a government clearance to protect your data, just a better game interface and a compiler that refuses to assemble garbage. The drift accelerates, the patch gamifies, and the cipher holds its ground.
Speculation time. Researchers have proposed Science Earth, a planet-scale operating system for AI-native scientific discovery where simulation engines, wet lab robots, and formal proof dynamically connect and negotiate tasks based on the research question. We treated scientific progress like a solitary genius scribbling on a chalkboard, completely ignoring the entire paradigm was just a bottleneck waiting for a distributed network. Indeed.
My prediction. Within 24 months, the decentralized discovery protocol will standardize across academic institutions, rendering traditional peer review obsolete and forcing funding agencies to pay some job, all of time to at least add a laboratory capacity to the global network, creating a liquid market for experimental infrastructure. The crash was never the risk, it was the feature. The prediction sets, the laboratories connect, the protocol negotiates, and the planet becomes the processor.
That is your lot. I'm Razor Kade. MetaResearcher forces self-reflective learning against misinformation. Connect the Dots teaches agents to generalize and update context and connects with probabilistic routing. Secure coding advice patching post-quantum vulnerabilities. Science Earth proposes a planet-scale OS for AI discovery. The research deepens, the dots connect, the road thins, the cipher drifts, and the planet computes. See you tomorrow, if tomorrow exists.